to the percussion. Now, percussion is a very important part of the examination, and it must be followed or carried out systematically. Now, how you should be doing the percussion? I normally, whenever I meet my students, they describe it in a very haphazard manner and straightway start describing about the percussion note on both sides. So, it is very important that when you want to do percussion, you are ideally doing this percussion on the lungs, and you want to diagnose whether the lung is afflicted with some pneumonia, fibrosis, or there is a fusion on that side. So, it is first very important to mark the boundaries of the lung. Otherwise, suppose there is a volume loss, if there is a collapse, the diaphragm has gone up, the liver will go up on that side, then you will be only percussing on the liver and maybe falsely telling that the lower part of the lung is dull. So, first and the foremost important thing on percussion would be outline the boundaries of the lungs. So, you start from above downward and try to localize both diaphragms. So, we know that the position of the diaphragm is different on left and right. So, on one side you have the 6th, 8th and 10th position. On the other side you have a 5th, 7th and 9th intercostal spaces. So, not only you try to see whether the diaphragms are normally placed, but you should also look for the movement of the diaphragm, and that you should do it by the tidal percussion. So, if you are able to demonstrate the position of the diaphragm and the tidal percussion, then there is no disease around the diaphragm. So, when there is an effusion, so how you localize the diaphragm on the right side? On the right side you start percussing from above downward, and because the lung is containing air, so the note will be resonant, and the moment you hit a dull note, that will indicate the presence of liver. So, that is where you mark your diaphragm, and then you tell the patient to take a deep breath and again repeat it, and if you find the dullness has moved downwards by one space, that indicates a tidal percussion. Similarly, on the left side, when you move from above downward, you look for the instead of dullness, you look for a tympanic note of the stomach air, and that is how you mark the diaphragm. So, by marking the position of the diaphragm, then you have actually found out the lung span. So, that is the area of the lung span where you are going to percuss, or what we call it as you are going to do comparative percussion. Comparative percussion is actually percussing over the both lungs. So, after the tidal percussion, then the next thing what you have to see is the right and left cardiac dullness. Now, it is a very important thing, because when there is a disease of lung, there is a shift of mediastinum, and this cardiac borders, if you see, you mark, they will shift accordingly. So, you try to look for the left cardiac border and also look for the right cardiac border, which is about 1.5 centimeter lateral to the mid-sternal point, and then the left cardiac border is where you actually have the apex beat. So, if there is a gross shift either leftward or rightward or upward and downward, that because the diaphragm, whenever there is a loss of volume on that side, the diaphragm goes up. So, the position of the apex beat and dullness will also go up and laterally. So, in situation of say left lower lobe collapse or left lung collapse, the apex beat will go upwards and leftwards. So, that's the way you will be picking up this thing. Now, sternal dullness is another very important part of percussion. Normally, behind the sternum is the heart. So, the sternal percussion is usually dull, and if there is a disease on the left side and the heart is shifted to the left side, the right heart border almost goes to the left sternal border, then the sternal percussion becomes resonant. So, presence of resonance over the sternum usually indicates that there is a gross leftward shift of the heart. So, after doing all these things, then you go for the comparative percussion. So, this picture shows you how to calculate the tidal percussion. So, you first do from a percussion from above downward, look for the dullness, and then tell the patient to take a deep breath and hold, and then again you see this dullness shifting by about one space, and this is the way you can decide this thing. And then you, as you can see, that you have marked the position of the diaphragm. And when you are percussing, it is very important that you don't percuss over the bony parts. So don't percuss over the scapula. So when you are percussing there, then you are doing it on the suprascapular area, interscapular area, and the infrascapular areas. And then interiorly, you are percussing from above downwards at the mid clavicular line, and these are the areas normally, and also at the right and left mid axillary lines you are going to percuss. So how you are going to describe your percussion findings? These are the sites, as I mentioned to you, where you are going to percuss: the mid portion of each clavicle, the lung apices, the posterior thorax, the axillaries and the mid axillary region, and the interior portion of the chest. So there are two ways you can do the percussion. You can do the percussion directly with your hand. This is called immediate percussion, where you can use your hand, your fingers, and this you can do it over the bony prominences particularly. The most common method is what we called as the mediate percussion, in which you use a plexor and a pleximeter finger. So you, with the left hand, you use as a pleximeter finger, and on the right as a plexor you percuss over a particular area. The important thing is that when you are percussing, after percussion it is very important to remove your right plexor finger, because if you continue to put your plexor finger on the pleximeter, it is going to damp down the vibration of the chest wall and the note may not be heard. So after striking the chest wall, immediately you should remove your finger and you try to look for the note. Now, what is the acoustic principle of the percussion note? The acoustic principle is like you have your hemithorax is like a percussion equipment, like you have a dholak, and you have it is like a hollow viscous, and you find the diaphragm of that percussion equipment, and you find there are strings and there are rings. So what you do is, suppose if your diaphragms are not very taut and you try to play on that percussion equipment, the note is going to be flat. But when you strengthen your strings, you tighten your strings and stretch your diaphragms, then you see a kind of resonant or a musical note starts coming. So similarly in the chest, when you have the lungs, and when in the lungs, when there is air, normal air, and when you try to percuss, it behaves like a hollow viscous, and you get a kind of resonant sound for this thing. And when you percuss, usually when you put pressure on the pleximeter finger, this finger actually moves downward, and it also moves the chest wall inside, and then sets the chest wall into vibration, and you hear the sound. But if there is fluid, or if the lungs are fibrosed, or if there is a fluid, then when you percuss, this chest wall cannot move in, because there is a lot of resistance which will be offered by the fluid. So what happens, that the force which you apply on the finger is not transmitted to the chest wall, and the chest wall is not moving. So most of this force will be dissipated on your middle finger, and that is why you feel a painful a feeling. Your finger, when you strike, creates a lot of pain on your pleximeter finger. So this indicates that the force which you have applied is not transmitted to the chest wall cannot go inside and cannot vibrate, and your note becomes very flat. So on the basis of that, you divide your percussion note and make the diagnosis. So under the normal circumstances, when you percuss, you get a resonant sound, because the chest wall is supposed thin, and the lungs are normally inflated, and there is adequate amount of air. The chest wall will move in, and it will cause vibration. But if there is consolidation, there is fibrosis, or there is a mass lesion, then there will be airlessness in the lung, and these lungs, when you percuss, will not compress and expand, and this will also interfere with the movement of your chest wall, and what you get is a dull note. But in pleural effusion, there is a complete obliteration of this chest wall movement, and you got a note what is called as a stony dull. So when you say stony dull, you actually mean that there is a fluid. When you say dull, that means still there is some movement of the chest wall and note is there. In situations of pneumothorax, normally your pleural pressure has negative pressure. But when somebody develops pneumothorax, the pleural pressure can be 0. So it is like a dholak or a percussion equipment with flat diaphragms. But when the pleural pressure becomes positive, like patient is having highly positive pressure in the pleura, so this whole thing becomes very tense and behaves like a resonator. And such situation, you get a hyper resonant note. You can also demonstrate a Coin test in such situation, and you also get the breathing pattern also like amphoric breathing. So these are the different percussion notes which you can hear, and the differential diagnosis you can have. And then there can also be a combination of stony dullness and hyperresonance, as you will see in cases with hydropneumothorax. And this can be demonstrated by what you call as a method of shifting dullness. Here the patient is made to sit first, and then you start percussing from above downward. If this patient has hydropneumothorax, he will first have a hyper-resonant note, and then it will be immediately terminated and gets into stony dull. Then you make this patient lie down. Suppose you are percussing on the right side, then this patient should lie down on its left side, and then you start percussing on that area where you found the dull note. You will see that it immediately changes into hyper-resonant note, because the fluid gets totally shifted to the other areas. And then you make this patient sit again. The area which was initially stony dull, which became hyper-resonant, should become again stony dull. So when you demonstrate all these three things, which will indicate that this patient has got a combination of fluid and air, hydropneumothorax. So we go to the last part of our examination, and that is the auscultation. And auscultation is a very important part of our investigation. Although, as I have told you, that if you do your inspection very well, in majority of cases, through your movement, size and shape, you will be able to make a differential diagnosis of 1 or 2 in majority of cases. With palpation, that can be further confirmed, and percussion adds to that phenomena, particularly when you have hydropneumothorax or effusion. That helps you. But auscultation refines your diagnosis further. Now, what you do on auscultation? Basically, auscultation can be divided into 3 steps. Again, they have to be followed in a sequence. The first part of your auscultation is breath sounds. After your breath sound, you should ask for look for spoken sounds. The spoken sounds are like bronchophony, whispering pectoraloquy, and egophony. Then after that, you look for the adventitious sounds. These are usually wheezes and crackles. This thing. Now we go to the first is the breath sounds. Now what you have to look for the breath sounds, as you know, that it's very important to understand where are these breath sounds produced. It has been seen recently looking into the acoustic phenomena of the breath sounds, and by recording our breath sounds on phonopneumograms, particularly by putting the transducers on the trachea, it has been found that these breath sounds are produced by turbulence of the sound, turbulence of the airflow, and this turbulence of the airflow usually takes place in the central airways. So contrary to the previous thinking that most of the normal breath sounds are produced at the alveolar level, now by studying their acoustic principles and the phenomena, we now know that the breath sounds are produced by the turbulence of the flow, and the turbulence of the flow is mainly seen in the central airway. That means the trachea, the main bronchi, and the segmental bronchi. So in this area, you see there is a turbulence and the mother sound is produced, and this sound has a mixed frequency ranging from 200 to 2000. So when this sound travels across the lung, through the aerated lung, it undergoes filtration and attenuation. What I mean by filtration is that a large chunk of high frequencies are filtered out, and there is also a significant attenuation in the amplitude of the sound. We know that the sound is described by its characteristic. Its characteristic is by its frequency, its amplitude, and its duration. So the frequencies, normally the breath sounds are, it is a noise, it is a combination of various frequencies ranging from 200 to 2000 due to turbulence, and when these sounds go across the normal healthy lung, all the higher frequencies are filtered out, and the lower frequencies, something between 200 to 400, are also attenuated to a significant extent. So what you hear on the chest wall basically is a small low frequency band ranging from 200 to 400, and that too is attenuated, with the result that you can hear it only during inspiration, because our inspiration is very active, and during inspiration the time taken is also short. That means normally our inspiration expiration ratio is 1:2. So we take half the time in breathing in as we have in breathing out. So that means in less time we take in breath, that means our flow rates are much higher during inspiration than our flow rates during expiration. So the turbulence, as we say, is the mechanism for producing this sound, will be much higher in inspiration than in expiration. In fact, if you find that the inspiratory flow remains constant throughout inspiration, so your turbulence almost remains constant during inspiration, whereas during expiration there is an exponential decline in the flow, with the result what you see is that the turbulence level starts waning or declining during expiration, and it becomes almost very low during the later part of expiration. So that is why when this sound is traveling from the mother position in the trachea and the major airways, when it goes across the lung, by the time it reaches the chest wall, you could still hear most of the inspiration, because inspiratory turbulence is high, but during expiration you could only see the early part of expiration, because during that part the turbulence is still high, but as there is this exponential decline in the flow, so this sound becomes lower and lower. So this is what we have, a normal description of the breath sounds. They are usually soft pitch sounds, sighing or gentle rustling. They are low frequency sounds. They are heard over most of the peripheral part of the lung. The inspiratory phase is longer, because inspiration you can hear better because the turbulence is high, and their expiration is much quieter. So you can only hear the early part of expiration, and later part of the expiration you can't appreciate. Now if suppose there are situations where you can transmit these sound waves across the lung without getting filtered or attenuated, then you can hear the same thing on the chest wall what you normally hear over the trachea. So if you put your stethoscope over the trachea, then you will be hearing unfiltered and unattenuated sound, and that would be the sound where you will hear most of the inspiration and most of the expiration. Since there is no attenuation and filtration, you can hear most of the expiration in this situation for this thing. So if you see here on this diaphragm, it clearly shows that if you try to auscultate somebody's breath sounds on the neck or at the mouth, there is no attenuation of the frequencies. But when you hear on the chest wall, there is a significant decline or at filtration or attenuation of the frequencies seen across the chest wall. This thing. Now this gives you a fairly good idea here. So from this diagram, you can see that this is a flow volume loop. On the upper part you have the inspiration, and the lower part you have the expiration, and you find that during inspiration the flow is more or less constant, and so the turbulence also remains constant. So if you put your stethoscope on the trachea, then you will be able to hear most of the inspiration there. But similarly, if you look into the expiratory part, you see that the flow is very high during the early part of expiration, and there is a decline in the flow. So the turbulence phase would depend upon the flow. So after a particular phase, as you can see here, C dash, D dash, beyond that, when the flow falls, the turbulence disappear. So you can hear the turbulence say from C dash to D dash when you put your stethoscope over the trachea. So what you see here is that you hear the inspiration C D on trachea and inspiration C dash D dash on the expiration. So the sound. So you can see that the expiratory sound is longer than the inspiratory sound. So if you hear breath sounds on the trachea, your expiratory sound will be longer than the inspiratory sound, because you can directly appreciate unfiltered and unattenuated sound. But when you hear on the chest wall, as you can see here, the A, B, as you can see here, the inspiration can still be appreciated, but during expiration, you can see that you can only hear A dash, B dash portion, because subsequent to that, most of the sound will be attenuated in its movement across this thing. And that is why the expiratory phase is shorter. So when these sound waves are transmitted from the central airway to the chest wall through a good conducting medium, as you see in pneumonias, other consolidations, mass lesion, then you can hear the sound exactly the same way as you would hear over the trachea. So that is the principle of bronchial breathing. So bronchial breathing we call what the kind of normal breathing which we hear over the trachea, but the breathing on the chest wall when there is a good conducting condition in the lung, where these sounds are not filtered and not attenuated. So this again tells you here again, this black thing tells you about the degree of turbulence. During inspiration you can see that there is a turbulence which you can appreciate, and during expiration there is a rapid decay of the turbulence because the flow is exponentially declining for this thing, and that is why. So you can hear this long turbulence in expiration only over the trachea, but you can't appreciate this long turbulence on the chest wall because it undergoes significant attenuation and filtration. So we have two concepts basically. You can have normal breathing or you can have bronchial breathing. So if you have normal breathing, the lungs are normal. If you have bronchial breathing, that means there is a good conducting medium between the central airways and the chest wall, and the conditions which you are going to diagnose would be consolidation and mass lesion. Now there are other situations where the breath sounds can be reduced on that side, on one side. In this situation, usually when there is a fibrosis, when there is a volume loss, then the distribution of the tidal volume is not equal on both sides. So when on one side less tidal volume is going, so less volume goes, means less flow, means less turbulence, means less of the sound. So that's how the breath sounds can be significantly decreased on this thing. There is another very important thing which I would like to mention here is breathing at mouth. Normally we don't hear breath sounds at the mouth. We normally hear them on the chest wall. So when a normal person breathes quietly, you don't hear any sound at the mouth. There is no breath sound heard at mouth. But when a person makes rapid breathing, like in hyperventilation, then you will see that you are voluntarily or due to some condition which cause hyperventilation, like exercise or conditions of acidemia, there is a marked increase in ventilation that will result in increase in flow and turbulence. So you can hear the sound at mouth. So when you have both inspiratory and expiratory noisy sounds at mouth, then this is usually after hyperventilation or exercise. So you can hear these sounds, both inspiration and expiration, immediately after exercise, or somebody who is hyperventilating due to acidemia or any other condition, or maybe psychogenic hyperventilation. But if you find a patient who have only inspiratory noisy breathing, that is something which you see in asthma patient. Because in asthma patient, the patient takes more time to breathe out, his expiratory time increases, so his inspiratory time shortens. And when his inspiratory time shortens, he tends to breathe much faster. So when he tends to breathe much faster, his turbulence increases further. So the inspiratory noisy sound you should be hearing. So it should not be confused with expiratory noisy, because during expiration in asthma or airflow obstruction, actually the flows become slower. They take more time to breathe out. So the turbulence falls. So in fact, the breath sounds may not be as loud as you would see in a normal person. So a noisy inspiratory breathing means asthma. And in emphysema, there will be paradoxically quiet breathing at mouth, because most of these patients will have very low tidal volume. Their lungs are emphysematous. They have a very little elastic recoil. So their flows are very slow. And even during inspiration, when they try to breathe in, since their tidal volume is low, so their turbulence is not heard. So it's very important to actually hear breath sounds at mouth, and you can make important diagnosis by this sign for this thing. The next important thing after breath sound is the spoken sounds. Now, what is the acoustic principle of spoken sounds? As I mentioned to you that normally we only hear low frequency sounds on the chest, and we can hear all full mother sound at the trachea. Now, when we speak, we have a fundamental note which is around 200 to 400 frequency range, and then you have most of your sound energy is accumulated in first consonant and a second consonant. The first consonant is usually between 500 to 1000 frequency range, and the second consonant is between 1000 to 2000. So if you really want to hear somebody with a very good volume, then the sound should have a fundamental note. The sound should have the first consonant between 500 to 1000, and the sound should have a second consonant which is between 1000 to 2000. So under normal circumstances, as I mentioned to you, when the sound travels across the chest wall, it undergoes filtration and attenuation. So all the higher frequencies higher than 400 are filtered and attenuated. So you will not be able to hear the sound on the chest wall if somebody is speaking, because of significant loss of both first and second consonant. When a patient has a condition in the lung, a pathological condition in the lung like consolidation or mass lesion, which allows the high frequency component of the sound to pass through, then you will be able to hear these patients' speech very clearly on the chest wall. So when you do that, we call this as bronchophony. Most of the time people use it as vocal resonance, increased vocal resonance, but actually it should be called bronchophony. And bronchophony means when you are able to comprehend very clearly what is being spoken. Under normal circumstances, because of the loss of the first and second consonant, you only hear something like a mumble. As if when somebody is speaking and you put the stethoscope on the chest, you will hear it as a distant sound, some incomprehensible mumble. But when there is a good conducting medium between the central airways and the chest wall, all the sounds are transmitted and you hear as if somebody is speaking into your ear, and you can appreciate that sound in its entirety. So that is what we call as bronchophony. The other sign which you hear is whispering pectoralochi. Now if you look into the acoustic principle of whispering pectoralochi and you record this sound, then this is basically a sound which contains only high frequencies. So whispering pectoralochi actually lacks fundamental note, and it only has something like second consonant. So under normal circumstances, WP should be absent because the higher frequency sounds are not transmitted. But if you could hear WP on the chest wall, that means the lung underneath are allowing high frequency sounds to be transmitted. So if you understand from this, bronchial breathing, bronchophony and whispering pectoralochi actually has the same acoustic principles. So if they are there, they should be there, all of them, and if they are absent, then all the three should be absent. So when you are looking into bronchophony, if you are in doubt regarding bronchophony, you can actually check it with bronchophony or WP. So many times when you are looking into these signs, bronchial breathing, bronchophony or WP, these signs may not be heard in characteristic form because they can be heard through the chest wall only for a very short period of time when there is a full consolidation. But once the pneumonia starts resolving, then the bronchial breathing and bronchophony becomes less and less characteristic. So when that happens, it has its own diagnostic significance, and it tells you that the bronchophony or bronchial breathing, which were very characteristic 2 days back, and if now you are not that characteristic, indicate that the pneumonia is resolving and patient is responding to your antibiotics. This is. Echophony is usually another sound which is heard just above the level of pleural effusion, again indicating the transmission of high frequency sound from the upper level of fluid. Now we go to the last sounds, adventitious sounds, and these are wheeze and crackles. Now wheeze is a feature of airflow obstruction. So whenever you hear wheeze on the chest wall or you hear wheeze at mouth, then this indicate that this patient has got airflow obstruction. Now this airflow obstruction can be a diffuse airflow obstruction like bronchial asthma, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, bronchiectasis, or it can be a localized obstruction which can be caused by tumor, viscid mucus, foreign body, or stenosis due to scarring. So the sound which you will hear in a localized obstruction will be a single sound which we call as monophonic wheeze. A sound which you hear in diffuse airflow obstruction will be coming from many airways, so you call it as a polyphonic wheeze. Now if you look into the acoustic principle of wheeze, then you see that it falls into two major principles. One is what you call as a Venturi effect. The Venturi effect is valid for localized obstruction. So whenever you have a localized obstruction, it will act like a Venturi, because when the air moves at the stenotic segment, there is a significant drop in the pressure at that point, and this drop in the pressure results in further narrowing of that segment, leading to complete closure. We call it as a dynamic compression of that segment. And when there is a complete closure, the airflow stops, and when the airflow stops, the pressure drop at that area also normalizes and it springs back. The moment it springs back, the airflow is resumed and the second cycle of dynamic compression starts. So with this way, with repeated opening and closure of this stenotic segment, this part of the airway sets into vibration and produce wheeze. The another mechanism is the dynamic compression of the bronchi, which we normally see in patients with diffuse airflow obstruction like asthma and COPD, and this is usually caused by the expiratory dynamic compression of the airways, which result into the vibration of this airway and produce what we call as a polyphonic wheeze. So the wheeze can be, as I said, it can be inspiratory when it is there on the extrathoracic portion of the trachea. So if there is a tracheal tumor or tracheal obstruction in the extrathoracic or intrathoracic portion, if it is in the extrathoracic portion, it will result into an inspiratory wheeze. When it is in the intrathoracic portion, it will result into the expiratory wheeze. So usually when there is a localized obstruction, you will have a fixed monophonic wheeze. When you have a diffuse airflow, diffuse or parenchymal lung diseases in a situation where lungs are significantly diseased, their compliance is very low, the lungs are deflated, they are almost like solid. It results into the closure of the smaller airway, and when this patient breathes during inspiration, these closed airway may open up one by one and produce what we call as sequential inspiratory wheezes. So when you have sequential inspiratory wheezes, it may indicate diffuse parenchymal lung disease with extensive fibrosis and loss of lung volume. And then we have expiratory polyphonic wheeze, as I mentioned to you, is seen in diffuse airflow obstruction like asthma and COPD. And when as I mentioned to you that the V's in the expiratory polyphonic V's in diffuse airflow obstruction is heard due to dynamic compression of the airways during expiration. But as the degree of airflow obstruction increases, this equal pressure point, that's the point at which the dynamic compression occurs, starts shifting towards the periphery of the lung. And when it reaches to small airways, whose mass and elastic structures are not very firm, and they are not able to vibrate and produce a audible wheeze, we call it a paradoxical absence of wheezing. And this is particularly seen in patients with severe airflow obstruction, patient coming to you with severe asthma, when the equal pressure point has shifted to the periphery, to small airways,